Today we are going to be talking about dialogue. Now we've talked about it before with our evidence. Remember that when we were looking for evidence, part of that was dialogue. That you could find evidence by finding the dialogue. And we said how you could find the dialogue was look for those quotation marks. So we're going to talk about it a little bit more. We're going to talk about writing it correctly so that you can, when you're writing your stories later on, when we're going to write narratives, that you will be able to write dialogue correctly. So we're going to go over some rules, and we're going to go over the tags of the dialogue, um, when you say said or replied, and we're going to come up with some different kinds of tags so that you're not always saying said. If you go to your week at a glance, and you see on Tuesday it says dialogue. This is where I will be attaching the video that I'm creating right now. Um, if you notice already, the notebook, the pages that we will be completing to put in your ELA notebook are already attached. If you do not have the ability to print at home, please send me a note either through Dojo's probably the best way, but let me know, and I will create a Google Classroom assignment for you. And then when you come back to school, we can print that. Okay. So, with that being said, let's go on to our notebook. All right. So, we're going to start at the table of contents, of course, like we always do. The last one that you put in your ELA notebook was adjectives. So, now right underneath that, write dialogue. And we're going to be using pages 12 through 14 for dialogue. Okay. That's three different pages 12, 13, and 14. So put 12 through 14. Um, and if you need to, go ahead and pause this and then start it up again after you have done this. Okay. So let's go to page 12. So on page 12, make sure that you are labeling 12 and 13. You're going to put ways to use dialogue right here, and then you're going to glue the rules for using quotes next to it on page 13. For the ways to use dialogue, there is nothing that you have to write on there, but page 13, the rules for using quotes, you do have to write on. So I would fill that out first and then glue it on. But I'm just going to show you where you're going to glue everything first, and then I'm going to make it bigger to actually go over how we're going to complete it. Um, and then finally, on page 14, you're going to have the choose better signal words for your tags. Okay. And we're going to fill that in together. Not all of it, because just like with the adjectives, this is going to be ongoing. So you can continue to add different signal words for your tags here, but we will complete some of them right now during the video. Okay. So let's get started. I'm going to go to a different document. And this is that first page that you don't have to write anything on, but I just want to go over it. It's three different ways to use the dialogue. Okay. So, first of all, you could have your tag after the quote. So, I would say, Cannon is a funny guy, remarked Sophia. So, this is your tag. The tag tells you who is speaking and how they are doing it. So, Sophia remarked. Okay. Notice that the quotation comes first, your dialogue comes first, and then the tag comes after, remarked Sophia. You can also have it before the quote. So you could say, Shelley exclaimed, and then give the quote, Maya is so sweet. Okay. Notice because this says exclaimed, my punctuation is an exclamation. Whatever you use for your signal word, for your tag, your end punctuation has to match that. Okay. And the third way you can do it, and this is not done very often, but it is used, is you can have the tag in the middle of the quote. So this is one sentence, but I am interrupting the sentence with my tag. So my sentence is, since you didn't finish your math homework, explained my teacher, you'll have to finish it at recess. So the sentence is, since you didn't finish your math homework, you'll have to finish it at recess, right? That's what I'm saying. That's what the teacher is saying. However, we interrupt it by giving the tag, letting you know who's speaking and how they're saying it, in the middle of the quote. Okay. This one is definitely more complicated. If you notice, you have to put the quotations before and then you also have to put the quotations after. So um, it's a little bit more complicated to do this one, but it has been done. And if you read your books and stuff, you'll probably notice it in there also. And we will be practicing it. All right. So let's go to the next page. Okay. So this would be right here on page 13. Okay. I know it looks a little different um, because this will be easier for those who have to do it online, who can't print it off. All right. So our first rule, the commas and the periods go inside the quotes. Okay. So if you notice up here, when I said Maya is so sweet, you put the end punctuation and then the quotation. When you're looking here, since you didn't finish your math homework, comma, and then the quotation. Okay. So it's always the punctuation first and then the quotation mark. Okay. So let's practice that. I want you to write at home, um, so that you are practicing how to write these correctly. If we were doing that at school, I would have the students give me a sentence, and we would write it together, but I'm just going to do it for you guys. All right. So my sentence is going to be, the students are busy working at home, explained the teacher. So the very first thing you do, because the tag is going to be after the quote, the very first thing you do is you start with the quotation marks. Okay. And if you notice, they look like little sixes because the first quotation marks, the beginning quotation marks, are little sixes. Okay. And then I begin. The students are busy working at home. Now, we're going to get to this later, but then you put a comma. So put your comma, because remember we talked about, well, actually, sorry, I'm getting confused. That's what we're talking about right now. The comma comes first and then the quotation marks. So comma first, then you write your quotation marks. And the quotation marks at the end are little lines. Okay. Then you put a space. Okay. Always a space between your quotation and your tag. Okay. So I put a space and then I write my tag. Explained the teacher. And notice I am not capitalizing explained because this is not another sentence. This whole thing is a sentence. So now I'm putting a period because that is the end of my sentence. Okay. So the students are busy working at home, comma, quotation, because the comma goes first, then the quotation marks, space, explain the teacher. Right. So you are either writing this on the paper that you printed off or you are typing this in Google Classroom. All right, so let's do our next. That's the first rule. So commas and periods, they go inside the quotes. They go first, then the quotation marks. Second rule, use commas to separate dialogue and speakers. So what I mean by that is the comma, you always have to have a comma to separate what is being said with who is saying it. But notice in red here, except when using a question mark or an exclamation mark. Okay. And the reason for that is the question mark and the exclamation mark replace the comma, because those punctuations like help to tell the reader how they're saying it. So if it's an exclamation, they know that they are saying it with emotion. If it's a question, they know that we are asking a question. Okay. So I'm going to do two sentences for this to show you, one with commas and then one with the exception. I'm going to make them short so you can fit them. I know you have two lines on your paper, and so you can fit them on one single line if you write this. Okay. So my first one is get busy, demanded mom. Okay. So it's just a command. I start with quotation marks, get busy, and I put a comma because the comma separates what is being said with who is saying it. So get busy, space, demanded mom, and period. Okay. The other way you could do, I'm just going to show you how you would do it if you did the tag first. You do not have to write this. I'm just showing you it. If you have room and you want to, that's fine, but you don't have to. So I could say, mom demanded, comma, okay, because this is my tag. The mom demanded is my tag. So then I separate it with a comma, space after my comma, quotation, get busy, period, because the period comes first, and then the quotation. Okay. So that's a different way of saying that if you did the tag first. All right, now let's go on to the exception. So I'm going to do a question. Okay. And it's a simple question. What did you say? Asked Pam. So we put the quotation marks first, the little sixes. Uh, what did you say? And now instead of a comma, because we're asking a question, we're going to do a question mark and then the quotation, space. Now this is still the same sentence, so we do not capitalize it. Asked Pam. And then we put the period for the end of the sentence. Okay. So what did you say? Asked Pam. Okay. Now I know, like, because of this question mark, it looks like that is just one sentence right there because that's an end punctuation. But when it comes to dialogue, it is not the end of the sentence. The end of the sentence is after your tag. Okay. If you did the tag first, you would say, Pam asked, comma, because you want to separate what is being said with who is saying it. Now, um, because we're doing the tag first, we don't have to worry about the question mark. And then we would say, what did you say? Question mark, and then your quotation. Okay. Both of these are the same sentence. It's just that this one you have the tag after the quote, and this one you have the tag first, before the quote. Okay. All right. And you would do the same thing if you used an exclamation. You'd put an exclamation there, space, and it'd still be the same sentence. All right. Last rule. So, first rule, commas and periods go inside the quotes. If you notice, all of mine went inside the quotation marks. Okay. Second one, you use a comma to separate the dialogue from the speaker, except when using the question mark or exclamation mark. Okay. Because the question mark and the exclamation mark replace the comma. You don't need both. Okay. And finally, capitalize the first letter of the spoken dialogue. If you notice, when it was the first word of the sentence, it was capitalized. But over here, when I use the tag first, mom demanded, comma, get busy, it's still capitalized. The beginning of every quotation must be capitalized, no matter where it is in the sentence. Okay. So the sentence I'm going to do, and of course, I'm going to do my tag first so that we practice capitalizing it even when it's not the first word of the sentence. I'm going to say, Fred stated, I'm enjoying this lesson. So we start with the capital, obviously. Fred stated. Okay, that's our tag. We need to separate it with a comma. So put that comma, space. Now let's do the quotation marks. I'm, notice I capitalized it. You always capitalize it. I'm in, oh, that was weird. Okay. Enjoying this lesson, period, because it's the end of my sentence, quotation marks. Okay. So the period goes before the quotation marks. And there we have it. Fred stated, I'm enjoying this lesson. All right, so hopefully you have written those in as I was going over it. You have done that. If you ever need to pause it, just pause it and then continue. So our last page that we're going to do is choose better signal words for your tags. So, of course, if we were at school, the kids would be shouting ones out and we would start writing them on the board, and then you would write them in your um, on your paper for your notebook. So it's all of these ones. Okay. We are not going to fill that page today, but we are going to do some of them, and then you can continue to add to it. Um, you're going to find a lot of different creative ones when you're reading your stories. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a few. First of all, I'm going to say asked. Okay. That's one that um, you're going to use quite a bit when they're asking a question, right? Let's see. Admitted. Okay. So um, it would. I broke the lamp. Admitted Mrs. Fisher. Okay. So whenever you're admitting to something, you can use that as your tag. Okay. Argued. Okay. Sometimes when characters are speaking, they're actually arguing with one another. So use that as a tag. Argued. Um, Another way, if someone is, well, you could put yelled, right? But if someone is yelling or speaking very loudly, a good way is bellowed. It's a fun one. Okay, bellowed is if the person is speaking loud, and a lot of times like loud and low. It's like bellowed. Okay. Um, if somebody is bragging and they're saying, "Oh, I'm so much better than you," bragged Mrs. Fisher. Okay, so right, bragged. So the signal word for your tag. Remember, your tag includes who's speaking, so the person's name, and then also how they're saying it. So, in other words, they're for this one, it's they're asking it, they're admitting, they're arguing. So, make sure that you are looking at how your character is actually speaking it, and try to be as specific as you can instead of just always saying said. I want to try to stay away from said all the time. Now, sometimes said fits, so it's okay if you use said. So let's go ahead and write said, okay? Because sometimes that does fit, but many times you can be more specific, and that will help your story um, be more descriptive also. Okay, if you're promising something, you would say promised, right? Um, I will do my homework tonight, promised Landon, okay, or whoever, all right? Um, let's see. Oh, has if your mom keeps asking you to do something, oh come on, didn't you do that yet? Come on, don't you do it? Parents are going to be upset with me. Sometimes you can say nagged. Okay, nagged means that they keep going at you and at you and at you, and and they don't let up. Okay. Um, Another one, like if you're saying something really loud, you can do roared, right? Laughed. I think you guys know what that means if you're laughing when you're saying it. If I'm announcing something, right? There will be a test today, announced Mrs. Fisher, right? Put that up so you can see it. Announced. If you're crying, right? And you're crying really hard, um, it would be sobbed. They might be still speaking, but you're crying, and so you're saying it in sobbed. Um, a simple, if somebody asks you a question and you answer it, it can be, oops, let's go to the next one. Replied. Okay. So, how are you doing today? I'm doing fine, replied Cindy. Okay. Of course, there can always be screamed or yelled or any of those. And finally, I'm going to give you gasped. So it's like, oh, I can't believe that, gasped Fred. Okay. So gasped. Those are just a few. There are so many more. If you have more that you're thinking of as I'm saying this, go ahead and write them down. Write as many down as you can. And then as you are reading your stories for AR and stuff, and you come across a really cool one, go ahead and write it in your ELA notebook. Because then when you start writing your narrative and you're trying to think of a more descriptive tag, you can go to your ELA notebook and get one. All right, so that is all I have for today. Um, Tomorrow, if we look at this, tomorrow we will be doing an activity with the comic strip and where you're going to be writing your own dialogue. So there will be another video tomorrow. So enjoy your day.